supervise.
Let me tell you, there were two civil disturbances. See, Detroit is two worlds, west side and east side. The west side has always been more affluent, more Jewish, more commercial, more dense. The east side was always the poor part of town where it started, the black bottom, and the east side was more white. We had white boundaries that locked us in. So I'm an east sider. The day of the riots, I was in a high school club for Sunday. I should have been home with my parents. My dad always wanted us to have dinner together. I left to go be with my buddies on the west side. On the west side, about 5 o'clock, one of the moms said, "You guys better go home. There's a lot of smoke, and there's fires on the east side." I got on the Dexter bus, and as we rounded at the boulevard, there was great billows of smoke. Well, I'm still on the east side. We're not hearing anything until I got off, and all down Gratiot at the AMPs and stuff, there was stuff going on. But what was most unique about the east side situation, it was contained, and the police put a perimeter around the points. On the east side, it was only going to go so far. On the west side, it could have went on forever. It could have been a forest fire. But on the east side, certain areas, Grosse Points, all those eastern suburbs that were all white were protected. The Indian Village was completely surrounded. They had tanks around Indian Village for the affluent. So if you had money, if you had influence and you had relationships, there were ways for you. So, on the east side, and I think I shared with some people, my only experience with that was, because when I was a good boy, we were in the house, ironically, the radio had broke, we had no music, the TV was dead, we had no TV. And so my family's religious, they wanted us to sing church music. It was like, oh, yuck. But we did it, and they played these records and we learned these songs, but we were watching people bring in sofas and refrigerators like mother of pearl. How do you get that in your car and get it home? But they were doing it, and they were doing it. But as Mike said, once the heavy artillery, Jeeps with 4 guys in it, tanks, etc. And then the other east side element was containment. Because we were the east side, we had space, we had Belle Isle, and Belle Isle is where they chose to use that. And so we would go on Belle Isle every weekend, and they didn't close the island down while they were containing people. It was open.
7,000 people were arrested.
Right, and we would ride around the island
and
as you got to
kept on Belle Isle with no rights.
In the bathhouse.
Right. As you would pass the beach, there'd be the bathhouse, and they used to play handball a lot in this region. And I don't know if they don't really play handball anymore. But all of them, and there'd be all these guys, mostly black, there'd be a few white guys with their shirts off, just holding onto the bars. And as they processed them, they would slowly let them out. So there were two worlds. This is where it was intense, a lot of drama. Now, my last story in that was, ironically, was the director of emergency services. So when I got the job in the city of Detroit, guess whose files I had access to? I saw it. And so in the files, there were all kinds of slides, transparencies, documents about the governor, the mayor, the whole deal. I got to see it. Some firemen lost their lives. There were major funerals. Some police were killed. They were there. So having access to the file and reading it was dynamic. And I don't mind sharing with you, I made copies of those transparencies because those are some photos that may disappear one day, but I've got copies. So if you see me at some museum, I'm standing there with a picture like that, I'll split the money with you. But no, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm a collector, I'm a hoarder. We'll probably get lost in the next flood.
Sources.
In the next flood,
You lost a lot.
I lost every flood. I lose things. When you collect things, you save things. And newspapers and magazines and books. And so I lost quite a bit. But I've got those, and I've moved those.
Right.
Make sure it's the third floor, not the second one. Get it on the third floor.
One of the horrible things about those people detained that he's talking about is that not only were they not in good conditions by any means, but they weren't allowed to notify their families in many cases. They didn't have phone calls and that stuff. So many people thought their family members were dead. They hadn't seen them since, and this was over a week after everything had stopped. They were still being detained.
Confusion in that time.
And fear. And when you talk about fear, I would hear people talk about how I saw tanks coming down. There's memories of that, obviously, and it's fear. And I've heard white people talk about seeing tanks coming down Woodward on their way over here and them being afraid. But Mike saw a mortar shell hit a building in his neighborhood. Think about how much more afraid you are when you know they're literally coming for you and your neighborhood. Like, it's scary seeing it, and it doesn't mean that it isn't. But that thought of, well, where are they going? And who are they after? I guarantee you, people who saw tanks going down the street, white people didn't think that they were coming for them. They weren't afraid of that, right?
One thing I remember out of all this is how quickly society can go from order to chaos. I mean, I was standing there on the corner, the first window broke, and people just kind of stood around. And then somebody ran into the store, and the police came in and got those two guys and dragged them off, and somebody broke another window. And this time the police didn't come. And somebody ran in there and took something, and they broke another window, and the police didn't come. And the traffic picked up. And then 5 minutes later, every window started being broke. People were grabbing clothes off there. I'll never forget one guy, because back then, you know, stores had their individual bags with those little loops in them. And he was coming down the street and he had loops on both arms. And he said the stores are open to the public.
And people sold electrical appliances that didn't have electricity.
That's
you
right.
know, the bottom line. You know, and then they would sell them because they were a medium of exchange.
These are the black businesses that were getting robbed.
Well, there were very few black businesses
Okay, that's a
there.
good point,
See, most of the businesses were Jews and Chinese and other merchants, Korean. Not a lot of black businesses. 12th Street had some black businesses.
What was coined from that was the expression soul brother.
That's right.
Because the black businesses would paint soul brother on the business.
Right.
And even the Asian Chinese restaurants, because people love Chinese food, it was everywhere, they would play soul brother on it. So it worked.
And they did not get burned.
Right, exactly. And at large. Now, if you had bad business practices, whether you're white or black, this is my opportunity to teach you a lesson, and that happened. But other than
there was
that,
a lot of contention between merchants and
but
business
I forgot about that. But that soul brother
That's
thing
right,
was
that soul brother.
it was really big.
That's
I forgot
right.
about that.
Go ahead.